people that see the Wildwood bag, I want them to look at somebody that's wearing it, and if they own one too, be like, oh, I bet I would be friends with that person because like I get them a little bit. Like they appreciate quality and uniqueness.
Hello and welcome to Architecture, Design, and Photography. Today, we are speaking with Becky McKinnell, founder, CEO of iBec Creative, Portland, Maine's leading award-winning digital agency. Alongside her talented team, she works with companies of all sizes across many industries to digitally transform their brands to more powerfully connect with their customers and thrive in today's e-commerce marketplace. Becky founded iBec Creative the day after graduating from the University of Southern Maine in 2006. In addition to her role at iBec Creative, Becky's also the founder-designer of Wildwood Oyster Co, a lifestyle brand inspired by salt air that is celebrated for its signature handbag and jewelry designs. Our interview today is sponsored by Maine Home Design. Don't miss Becky's design theory in the upcoming July issue of Maine Home Design. Thank you for coming to the studio today. Becky McKinnell will be sitting there soon.
It's good to work with people, right? You know, like being in a place where other people are working. You know, there's just such a big like work from home movement now, and
right.
You know,
welcome to Architecture, Design, and Photography. This is Becky McKinnell. McKinnell. Yeah,
McKinnell.
I already did the intro, so don't worry about it. People working around people.
Yes.
It brings so many complications, but it's one of those things. If you don't have it, you can go crazy.
I love the office. I am such an office lady. I love to go every day.
Everything about my life was avoiding having to go to an office. Like,
but did you have a fun office? Because I really try hard to make a fun office.
This is a good conversation. So every part of my life yearns to not be repeated. If I'm going to the same place ever, it starts to lose something in its appeal. So to go to one place, to some place, for me to go to some place once, no matter if it's a vacation for work or whatever, is highly like, oh, wow, okay, great. I'm learning stuff. Through this experience, I'm gaining more insight and able to pull more out of the abstract into the more concrete because of that new experience. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I map that experience onto like, yeah, I've been here before, and I'm very environmentally anchored, or that's where my
sensitive
understanding comes from, right?
Yeah.
So if it's repeated too much, it loses the feeling of the first time I was able to interact with that, and I just know it. And that knowing to me is stagnant and claustrophobic. Mm-hmm. So when I was a kid, I had job, or when I wasn't middle-aged, I had jobs that were repetitive, and I was like, you know what, homeless is better than this. And in that I knew I was capable and resourced enough to at least be able to build myself a car that I could live out of indefinitely, comfortably, and thrive that way. But
wow, so you really did that. I didn't realize that you did that for part of your life. That's amazing. Yeah.
I mean, every part of my life has been striving towards experiencing the novel within healthy boundaries as much as it could. It's psychological terms. They call it zone of proximal development. How far you can be outside of what you know and still be able to not have it degrade you emotionally, psychologically over time. So I like to have my systems of the things that I depend on, but I really benefit from, or I, at least psychologically, there's an appeal to it to be outside of the common, like everyday thing.
Interesting.
So yeah, working with people, I really enjoy working with people. I really enjoy these kind of conversations. But to go to the same place every day, I don't know. I struggle with it, but you enjoy it. And that is really interesting to me because we need, obviously, people that thrive in these environments to actually accomplish things.
And I think design plays into this. So this was a couple years ago. I took a personality test for some business group that I was in. It was supposed to tell you all the things.
What was the business group?
I think it was for Vistage.
Okay.
It's this like,
I was part of BNI for a while.
yep, I did BNI.
Oh,
BNI was
hard.
huge in helping me start my business.
It's great, but it's like you have to like stand in the corner and small talk. And for me, again, that's another thing that I've designed all of my life to not have a tie, to not go to the same place, on and on and on. Like all these kind of things, odd.
But back to like location and place. So what I realized was that I ranked really high for location as part of my values. And I think that
what's that mean?
So the way that I interpreted it is that I really care about my surroundings. And I think like that's what also plays into
like
design.
Geography or design space?
I would say both, like everything, like having a house that you feel like is a reflection of yourself and you feel like is designed to match your personality.
I agree with
having,
you
like,
on this.
An office that makes you feel like you can be creative and be collaborative.
Okay.
And then being really connected to your community around you and nature around you, and just having that like
I have a hard time
deep
understanding
connection.
community though. But yeah, that immediate place, definitely can understand that. Geographic value, can very much understand that. When it comes to community, how do you interact with and value community?
I think it's everything. It's, one of the things I love about iBec, we work with a lot of local businesses. So we can just drive down the street and see like, that's our client, that's our client, that's our client. And you feel like you're helping businesses that are in your neighborhood, or like places that you go to shop yourself, or, hiring people that you know personally, where it's their own business and you're helping them thrive by making your purchases locally, and just having that deep connection to like, I live here, I love it here, and I'm going to spend my money here and build my business to help other businesses around here thrive.
Yeah. Now that I can get behind. Now, how do you find value? I guess that's the way I have to word it. Interestingly, I've been interacting with Chat GPT a huge amount in the last 2 weeks because we were driving across the country. And as my wife was driving, I was just sitting there like trying to catch it being self-aware, trying to corner it like, okay, define what self-aware is. And then I'm going to work to trap you into admitting that you're self-aware. It's pretty good at it. But it has an incredible amount of value for clarifying your own thinking, because you don't get to make emotionally based or biased claims in working with it to achieve forward progress towards my stated goal of getting it to admit it's self-aware, right? So it's helped me clarify my thinking, and I don't have a emotional understanding of how people can enjoy repetitive actions or repetitive experiences. But a more conservative mindset, or conscientious, it would be the psychological trait that leads to conservative political views, but a more conscientious psychological trait values the things that have been established and receives emotionally positive experience or emotionally positive reaction from interacting with things that they find to be consistent, true, and reliable, right? So this is the other half of, I'm out here like, I want to go experience new things. And then the other half of our population, and it's pretty much a split down the middle. The other half is like, well, if you go out there, there's danger out there because we don't know what's out there. Over here, this is the repetitive experience of what we've already established and brought into the lexicon of what we find as true. And we find value and comfort in staying within these boundaries, but also interacting with consistency, right? So, it's always a gradient. It's not like you're this or you're that. Because I have my areas where I really want consistency, and those are usually in contractual relationships, because I'm not great with, I think I'm, if I were to take a test, I would imagine I'm pretty close to being somewhere on the spectrum as far as my lack of ability to find value or enjoy shallow level human interactions about just simple commonalities or making conversation. I just go right through that, and I make a lot of people uncomfortable at times if I'm not careful. Right?
You just get right to the point and get real.
Right. Like, okay, let's talk about money. Let's talk about the terms. Great. Let's be creative. But a lot of other people want to like kind of communicate about, well, my family's going through this and that. And if that's a situation, I can like, all right, let me assess it and I'm going to fix it for you because that's not how you do that. And I've only learned that through experience and failure. But I don't even know what I was responding to at this point. I've gone down a rabbit hole. I need to be quiet and let you talk more.
Thinking about the office, I feel like you and I have different definitions of what the office is. Like why you don't like the office, I'm guessing, is that you think of it as a place where you're like chained down and like have to do a repetitive task and someone's looking over your shoulder telling you what to do.
In a way, yeah. And it's also, I have such incredible curiosity and interest in the things that I want to determine that I focus on. I think I don't make a great employee, and I'm really good at the things I'm interested in, but I have a hard time faking interest in things I'm not interested in. And so to work for someone else, if I'm not doing exactly what I'm best at and most curious about, I'm in a way, the ability that I have to, and this is a crass term, but the ability that I have to prostitute my working capabilities and sell them, sell my time. That's my conscious ability to be alive and in the moment, I'm selling that, which is, I'm prostituting my consciousness for a positive end result for everyone. I wouldn't associate that with the negative connotations that we have in physical prostitution of people. But its work is a mental, emotional, in a way, prostitution. Which I get it. These are extreme, but to take the emotion out of it and think of it in this way, I have a hard time doing that beyond the one interaction of, I will come and do this creative act for you and you'll get great images out of it. But if I had to come and do this again, I'd lose interest because I already photographed this place. I've never had to go back and shoot a second time except for once, and we just forgot a composition. I've done that twice now. But to think like, all right, we're driving all the way to the end of Cape Cod somewhere, and we're going to see this place today. And it's, wow, it's amazing. And then by the end of it, you're like, geez, if I had to come and do this tomorrow, I couldn't do it. So much energy and creative mind space to do that. And then to think you're going to do this 5 days a week, it just doesn't happen that way. But so how do you make a work environment? How would you, if you probably, first of all, wouldn't hire someone like me because I'd make a horrible employee.
We'd hire you as a contractor.
I love that kind of arrangement. It's like we have, like if I was in the military, I'd be a sniper. It was like, hey, we got a thing out there for you to go do by yourself. Aside from the, act of killing people, I'd probably be pretty good at that. But yeah, so tell me how I'm, this is all about me. This isn't good.
Starting off having a great office culture, whether it is in the office or like a great work culture where you're expecting people to come to work 9 to 5 and show up for you and show up for your clients, you have to create an environment where people feel like themselves. So people like you who are highly introverted and crave going out. I didn't even say that yet, but you got it. Go out and also love to experience things and travel. Like you might be the one that we send off to meet Dubai, with our clients and
Antarctica, whatever.
Be on the road and, out and about, maybe not sales, but, I think it's the employer's job to really get to know each employee and find out, what makes them passionate, what makes them like, what work is easy for them. Like you want everyone to feel like work is effortless because they're using their most creative selves. They feel like they can be themselves 100% human when they show up. Like I really strive to make sure that people don't come to work as their work selves and then they leave work and they're their home selves. I want them to be themselves like all the time, and just really encouraging that deep relationship building with coworkers so that people feel like friends, and or at least friendly with one another, where you really care. And then work suddenly becomes more about relationships and less about like, jamming on the keyboard.
Right. So did you have, because what you just said there, like finding what that person is good at. So they're interacting with a task that utilizes their highest capabilities or their highest value in relation to that, but is also overlapping with an intense amount of their own interest.
Yeah.
So they get to work and they're kind of like blossoming in a way, rather than like, okay, just look at the clock, keep going.
Yeah, no, those people should quit. Like they're just not in the right role.
Why I'm self-employed. I worked in an architect's office when I was in architecture school, and I'd black screen with red, green, yellow lines, and I was like, geez, if I don't have the lock on and this line is an inch off in reality, but it looks like it's on, and then they got to blast the whole thing out, and then I'm looking at the clock. It's only 5 minutes. I thought it was an hour, and like. Oh,
but there are other people that love that and totally thrive in that exactness.
And there's far more people that will excel at that than the people who can't. Because I think if nature populated, us with a bunch of people like me, it would be bad.
Well, we need really diversity, and that's how.
I'm
works.
fine with it because I know myself enough to know where I'm happy. And it's not in the group, which is kind of sad, but it means that my closest relationships mean that much more to me. And the value in interacting with other people comes at a deep level rather than a shallow level.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That is some good stuff for me to say today about myself. I've realized something. Thank you. Next on our... You've got a lot of insight with working with these humans.
I do, yeah.
Did you learn this, or was it did it come over time with experience? Is this something you learned from a textbook, or is this just your natural ability?
Yeah, well, everything. I started iBec the day after I graduated college. So
what made you do that?
Well, I wrote a business plan my senior year at USM as part of an assignment.
Okay.
And I started researching.
Is this like a FedEx story?
I don't know the FedEx story.
It was a business plan from a business college, something or other.
Yeah.
They just wrote the business plan and they're like, it's my work.
Exactly.
Let's do it.
So I took it seriously, and I was in a business plan competition at the end of the semester when I graduated. And because I was in this competition, Maine Center for Entrepreneurs gave me a year of free office space at their business incubator at the time.
We photographed some spaces like that in Boston that were incubator spaces, and I looked around.
Yeah, where you work with other people, Trent.
You're all going to fail, and this is just a nice thing, but they don't.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, because you have that collaboration of like other people that are also struggling and also trying to figure it out, and just like
that's great.
Pulling it together. So I felt like, when I graduated, I could go work for somebody or go do freelance. But this business plan was just kind of on my lap, and I had this opportunity to have a free office space that I could call work. And I was already broke and used to eating ramen. And
it is such a gift to know how to survive on nothing.
Exactly.
It gives you that, like, if it all falls apart, I still know how to exist at this level, and I'm actually very content at this level. So going up is not an issue.
Yeah, I think that, when I think about starting a business now versus then, like there's just so much less risk that you have when you're
What's
just
the internal emotional response when you consider it all fails and you have to start over?
That I can do it again.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think that way. I'm like, that'd be so hard. Couldn't do it.
I like starting things. That's what I'm learning about myself now after starting Wildwood Oyster Co, after iBec, and continuing to do two businesses. I'm starting to recognize my personality, that I like business so much that I want to create more businesses in the future.
You got a little Elon Musk thing going on. It was like,
Richard
Branson.
Established
this, and now I'm going to roll this into another another entity. I'm going to roll that into another entity. Roll it.
I think it's like what I've learned each time. And, while iBec we're coming up on our 17th year of business, which is wild. And then Wildwood is coming up on our 5th year of business. And so I'm starting to think more about how the businesses relate to each other and how they can help each other grow and what are the synergies between them. And then also like core values between the two. And like, if I have a business or the next business, what are the core values that you can thread through every single business that's like, oh yeah, Becky McKinnell started that business. Like, I know it's going to be awesome because X, Y, and Z. And, just really putting thought around like my brand and how the businesses that I create remain consistent for my personal brand.
Let me say some controversial things that might offend you for a second.
I'm ready.
But it's a compliment that you might need to educate me on a bit, and I want that. The honest position for me is I enjoy working for women more than men, if I'm honest. And it's not that I have a preconceived idea ahead of time. This is after the fact. The most inspiring people I've worked for have been women. I can't, now it might just be that I'm picking them out because, no, it's not. Like most of the people I work for are women. When I do work for men, it's not as easy of a relationship at times. I think, I don't know. But there.
Do you feel like it's more competitive? Yeah, okay, maybe. So talking to you right now is very inspiring for me because you're talking to me, telling me about how I could work effectively and be valuable to you. In you're not like, hey, I'm going to prostitute you into my business. You're telling me, well, I see what your value is. Not talk about prostitution. We're all about helping people thrive and pay them very well and having a great place to work.
I'll try and use better verbiage. But my relationship to work in the stereotypical mindset of like the office is that relationship to me. It's taking something from me that I don't want to give away. But I have to for money. Yeah. So it's accurate. It's crass though. I get that. But the best work I've done has been from people that expressed a large degree of appreciation for what I do and gave me the direction to go, and then stood on the sideline and was like, this is great, keep going, look at that, this is and then they kind of come in and they interject a little bit and we talk about it, and then they stand back and they're like, look at him go. And it's like, whoa, like in from my position, if I was in their position, the thing I'd be doing is I'd be coming in trying to be like, I have a strong opinion here and I've got to control everything. And not that I have to, but I know I'd have the tendency to want to come in and meddle, mess with, and give it my voice so I could put my stamp on it in some way. And I don't think that would be a good thing to work under. And I don't know if that makes me a good person for other people to have working for them in the kind of situation where I'm effective, but you kind of have to stand back and say, like, in the specific thing that he's doing is good, and we're going to allow for that, and we're going to use him for this example, but we can't meddle too much, else the value that we see is not going to be the value that we're paying for as much. And then in the process, if we meddle too much, it becomes designed by committee in a way. Yeah. But the people that have been the most empowering consistently have been women, except for one client who's one of the better clients I've ever worked with. But that's a side note, just in case he's listening and he hears this. He's incredible. He knows who he is. But the empowerment and the feeling of like we accomplished something great together is fairly consistently the female interactions of like a female is in charge and I'm working towards the goal that they've set for me, but they somehow, and I can't quite obviously articulate it that well, but in working in most male situations, it is a little more, my flag. There's a little bit of that, and I can work in that environment, but and I can achieve good stuff as I have, I think, with people like that. But it's a different feeling at the end of the day when I feel like I've been coached in a way to win a game rather than a tool for someone else to accomplish their goal.
You said the magic word. It's being a coach and being really specific about what success looks like to you and giving all of your ideas. Like if you feel like that need to, have your own voice and have everything that's in your head come out, like share all that in the beginning so that they know what their constraints are and what success looks like. And then you just check in with them, whether depending on the amount of time, but if it's like a month-long project, check in every week and track progress and give them guidance and coach. And then by the end, you've really just brought them along and they have had the autonomy the whole time and the support if they have questions to finish the project and be really proud.
And how did you have a desire to be a business owner, like essentially a developer of businesses, essentially?
No.
As a kid, before you like entered this company, did you think like I'm going to be an entrepreneurial magnet? Or?
I don't really, I've always liked to work. Like I had a paper route in 5th grade. So like I like to work and earn money and have consistently done that through high school and college.
Did your parents kind of give you an environment where that was encouraged, or was it just like mom and dad were bums and you still wanted to do this? Like, not that your parents were bums.
No, they weren't bums. But I guess I just wanted money. Like I wanted my own spending money, and like they would give me, $1 a week for allowance, and that was not enough for all the things that I wanted to do. So I think that flyer came in the paper and I wanted to start that. They have always encouraged me and supported me in whatever I wanted to do. But it wasn't like actually I have an 11-year-old daughter and I have to watch myself now because I am like, oh, so our neighbor just moved in next door. Like you could be babysitting soon. And she's like, Mom, you're always talking to me about like what I'm going to do for my first job. And like, trying not to like, I think it's really important that kids have jobs and they are not just, having their parents pay for everything. But I need to like make sure I'm, holding back a little bit and not totally thinking that the thing that I care about is what her first job is going to be.
Right. Yeah. So this morning I was using a power washer to get rust off of this vehicle that we're trying to rebuild. And sometimes you need a garden hose to water plants. Other times you've got to have like a laser focused water to blast rust off of something. My personality as it relates to how I perceive and what I do is that laser focused thing. And it seems like a good manager of people and of a business will more so water things rather than like laser die cut water through steel kind of. And that's a really useful thing in a very narrow window of uses, but to be able to water a garden and like you're bringing up sustenance to create more life. Rather than this laser focus purpose.
But you need to have the laser focus too, because you have to be driving things forward and, it gets boring if you're just watering the plants all the time. At least that's what I feel like. But you're right. Where's
a job your laser focus come in, and where are you a garden hose and where are you like water cutting through steel? Yeah,
water hose is managing people and the people that I work with.
I have a water hose setting for the poor people around me.
And then the laser focus is on driving the business forward with setting goals. Like, what are our goals for this quarter? What are we measuring to know that we're successful? Who are the teams that are going to be working on these? And then letting those teams go off and
How
accomplish
many
those goals.
people do you have working for you?
I have 14 people at iBec and then 2 people at Wildwood.
Okay. How do you manage people?
I love it. I mean, there's a lot of people that say like, oh, employees, you can't live with them, you can't live without them. Like, you can't have that mindset and have a great place to work. I realized that early on. I was probably like 24 or so, and I hired my first full-time employee, and they gave me the paperwork to apply for their mortgage, and I was like, holy shit, like this is real. This is not pretend business. Like, and just realizing the gravity of like, people are spending at least 40 hours of their life every week because of you. It's my responsibility to make sure that those 40 hours are not a waste of time. And when they move on to another job in the future, when they look back at their time at iBec or their time at Wildwood, they're like, those were the fun years, or that was a really special place, and just have like appreciation for it rather than like, oh, I'm so glad to be out of that place. Like, I want to create good memories for people and have them be proud of the time that they were at iBec or Wildwood and that they've grown from it, and just, leave one of my companies better than when they came in.
So it's not that it seems like it's not that you're trying to formulate or create a workspace that's fun for people as much as you're not going to be able to not feel useful, valued, and engaged when you're here.
Yeah.
You're going to feel, if you're here, speaking as you're as an employee at this business, you're going to feel like your highest and best calling for the talents you have are creating things of high value.
Yes.
And the process of making that is one that is fulfilling to you, almost to the sense that you'd be doing it without even being paid, in that if money just weren't an invention we came up with, you might still be doing what you're doing today.
Yeah. Feeling like you have real relationships with the people you work with, whether it's clients or coworkers, feeling like you have the autonomy to do your thing and not have someone micromanage you, and just feel like, the company that you're working for is a force for good.
Right.
That was a big part of why iBec became a B Corp, is because I wanted to show that iBec had the continuous infrastructure and system to be a force for good, and it wouldn't just be something that was like a flash in the pan. I want it to be an eternal part of the company, that it's always giving back to the community, always taking care of employees, reducing the minimal negative impact on the environment as much as possible, and just being really fair and treat customers well with transparency. Like, I feel so deeply about that going through the B Corp certification made it official.
Okay, now you did something unique in the formation of this business plan that started iBec, and you became a B Corp?
Yep.
These are words, I don't know what they mean. So let's get there. But what was it unique about your business plan that, like, well, a bunch of people do this already. Why would this be of any use? But it was. Like, you, an unexperienced young woman, have created a business that's stayed around.
Isn't it unbelievable?
It's not unbelievable. It happens all the time. But I like to know, what was it that was special about this one that succeeded?
So a couple things. When I started in 2006, it was the time when there were print designers and then there were web developers. And so iBec was able to make pretty websites.
Okay.
Because the print designers typically didn't know how to design for web, and the web developers made ugly websites. So we were able to blend the two. That made us successful. The other thing, which still surprises me to this day, is we just had really good customer service and called people back and were really responsive and just really being very attentive to people. I think everybody you talk with has a horror story about their website, about how they got screwed over or blah, blah, blah. Like, every time we have a new client, we hear one, and anyone you talk to about their website will most likely have a negative experience. And we just really go overboard to be responsive and help people and guide them and inspire them.
Okay. So it seems like you identified a shortcoming in the market, especially, so 2006, I started this business around the same time. I only have one employee. That's by choice. But you identified a shortcoming and a place where you could exist where those two things could be met far more effectively. And it seems like at that time you're in your 20s. Mm-hmm. As I was in my late 20s. Just being youthful at the time helps you identify like the print thing, where it's starting to kind of like top out and not meet the needs of the new things coming, the new needs of website, and how these guys are not getting this, but being young at the time, you're immersed in, and you have to be, this is an interesting thing to me, you have to be at a younger part of your life, a newer part of your life, you have to be more open to what's possible to then figure out how to establish what you're going to use to provide for yourself relating to work. So during that time of your life, you have to be psychologically more open to try and like consider possibilities. You see print, you see web, they're not meeting in a good space at web. You say, I can do that. And you've got the tenacity and the desire to establish yourself, and you've won something that other people said, yeah, you might have something here. Go get them. And you're just like, hell yeah. So I did that in a similar way with digital photography around 2006. Film was like, it was just kind of topping out. You could see the guys that were still shooting film that then were trying to transfer into doing the post-production. They transfer the film slide into, they transferred in digitally and then start to manipulate it. And it just didn't have the depth of everything that you need to make a better image, right? And then you'd see them do things where the post-production was overdone because they were just jumping into this thing where luckily I had a background of one, understanding architecture, understanding how to look at architecture, and I had used the tools of photographic manipulation. I had used those on presenting architecture in school. So I learned Photoshop, stuff like that, to put my presentations together rather than a bunch of glued pieces of paper and trace. I'd scan the trace in and then manipulate it in Photoshop, combine it with hardline drawings and everything else to create a better presentation. I was like, yeah, this looks great. I like this. And this is more effective. It's more effective with my time. And I can be more creative with it. And then when I finally got to the place where I realized that going to an office every day to work in those situations wasn't going to work for me, I basically just transitioned towards doing digital architectural photography because I knew I had the ability to get these digital files together and look better than what other people were doing at the time. That's a short of it. But how do you then, at this trajectory of your business, right? You're approaching late youth, coming in for a landing at early middle age, I'd imagine.
I'm going to be 40 this year.
Oh, that's a great accomplishment. Wait until 44. That's when you're, at least if you're as immature as I am, at 44, you realize, oh, I'm an adult. It took me, genuinely took me that long. That was your number? Which is just so hilarious that, like, at 44, I started to realize, like, I think I'm the oldest guy here. And, like, I can't sprint anymore. It's just all this stuff where you kind of, But that now that you're at, like, the peak of your earning years by generalized standards, right? How do you stay on the cutting edge? You're not young anymore, where you naturally have the advantage of, I'm just in this group of people who doesn't have a clue, so they're more aware of what's possible, rather than I've had enough experience so I know a lot of things and I can't look away from the things I know to determine what's possible. That's why we have young people, and that's why we have people die, in my opinion. Is because you go through life, the young ones determine what's possible, and then once they establish the things that back up what they find to sustain themselves, they turn protective towards that.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a natural instinct to protect what you're doing and how you're doing it because it's worked. But you also at the same time have to understand this has got to change or grow or improve if it's going to become something that can kind of separate from me and grow into something where I don't have to be at the cutting edge all the time growing this thing. Like, how do you as a person with your businesses then adjust how these businesses are going to grow now that they're not in their formative, or at least your first business is not in its formative period, and it doesn't have you as a early 20s woman with all that youth of lack of knowledge in front of you, but all that perception. You have more perception, less experience. Now you have more experience, but if you're not careful, you have less ability to perceive because you know too much.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that?
A couple things. I think it's important to recognize that there's a difference from being an entrepreneur in your 20s to being an entrepreneur in your 40s. And
what is the difference?
Fearlessness of like, what do you have to lose? Of just like, oh, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. And I do like to try things, even
but
if
you're more resource now, right?
Yes, for sure. But I still have to. My decisions don't just affect me. I'm not operating
Those
in a bubble.
mortgages are kind of your
responsibility. There's other people that if I make a big mistake, it affects.
If it's too risky.
So I think, recognizing that part of taking risk is part of growing both personally and professionally in your career and your business. So like keeping risk and trying new things is part of like when I was talking about the goals earlier, like what are we going to try that's new? I think, leaning into the unknown. You mentioned ChatGPT earlier. Like that's a huge threat to so many businesses, including ours. And like you can't turn your back to it or else you're going to get run over. So how do we look at ChatGPT? Like the college student who's graduating this year that's writing a business plan for their senior class and doing a pitch competition. Like what is 22-year-old Becky thinking about ChatGPT right now? And
do you have any pulse on what younger people like in their early 20s are actually thinking about ChatGPT compared to what people approaching middle age might be thinking about it? Like, is there a conversation with in your office that you get the younger people have kind of this view and the older people kind of have that view?
We're definitely making space to talk about it regularly. I don't really notice a difference between the ages. And it might just be because we're all like tech people and are, a similar cross section of people that are interested in technology and design and marketing. I feel like I'm the one in the office that's like, come on, let's go. Like we got to move on this. I think other people are, they compare it to when email came out, like, oh, the post office is going to shut down. Post office never shut down. But like things are going to change because of this, and we need to be trying things and taking risks. And I just told my COO the other day, like, whatever trials you want to run for any AI powered thing, like go for it. Just spend money on this because we need to be ahead of our clients and ahead of our partner or the other agencies in town.
Now, okay, so here's an interesting kind of loop. I mean, how do I frame this without getting canceled? Sorry.
You shouldn't say it if you're going to get canceled.
But you should. There's not it. If you harbor feelings of superiority or hate, that's worth canceling. I get that. But to say something, so competition is valuable. Where do you draw the lines on competition to say, how are we disadvantaging other businesses that need in trying to advance ourselves? Like within the philosophy of capitalism is kind of not a let's raise this tide to raise all boats. It's certainly, in conversing with you, it's in your vision and your mission for who you are and what you're creating. But also, you can't deny that in trying to improve a business to use AI to get past other people, you're disadvantaging a business.
Let me clarify.
Okay.
So we talked about me being a young entrepreneur, and that has definitely been part of my identity of who I am as an entrepreneur. Like, oh, she started right out of college. And so that is something that I've found success with, is being able to establish a credible business at a young age. And it has led to my fear now of being old school. Like, I cannot be old school. So when I think about like my hustle for getting ahead of AI, it's because I am fighting to not be old school,
right,
no matter how old I get.
Now, every single person accused of participating in a system that in any way disadvantages anyone else could be expressing that same thing. But the accomplishment of achieving not being pushed aside, either like survival of the fittest type of stuff, throughout history, nations enslaving other nations to make themselves. I mean, like Britain's national anthem is Britannia, we will not be slaves. Like, it's in their thing. Like, we're going to be the ones that stay ahead. In the current political conversation of, a more egalitarian type of thing, that means we need to focus on raising the tide, not individual boats.
Totally. Yeah, no, I hear you. And
there's complexity and nuance there.
It's a very collaborative environment, in my opinion, with our local competitors. And I mean, national competitors. There's so many people that do what we do, and you have to be collaborative. And I don't believe in keeping, secrets of knowledge. Like, it's all about spreading knowledge and giving things away for free and sharing with each other. So it's not like I want to like crush everyone and be the only one standing. It's not that at all. It's that I want the pride of knowing that we were forward thinking and innovative and came up with a cool idea that other people haven't thought about. And then we share that.
And you kind of set the standard in that way. And it's not that you're going to become this thing that goes like that and everyone else just falls. You're going to go like that, and you're going to receive attention in business for a while, and then everyone else is going to come up like that.
Yeah, that's what innovation's about.
Like that, then everyone. So that, in that way, I can think about it in that way as a. But if you, and maybe that's what the current political climate is what a lot of it is about, is that it turns into this form. And then the efforts are redoubled with the gains to maintain that structure, which unfortunately looks like a patriarchal hierarchy. But if the efforts gained, are used to oppress everyone else that wants to bring the water level up, and you say, no, I just want to keep it like this, and I'm gonna patent, I'm gonna monopolize, I'm gonna crush, I'm gonna drastically lower my rates for a time so I get all the business, and then when everyone else goes out of business, I'm going to go, okay.
Yeah, those people are assholes.
That helps me understand. and I know that I completely, if I don't, which by the way, we all have to admit that we're all assholes, and that it's only through the realization of being an asshole that you can avoid being an asshole. That's my opinion. Do you disagree?
I think I disagree.
You hold some disagreeing in the eyes there. Tell me about it.
Define asshole.
Well, let's go right past the technical definition. I mean, like someone who would strive for accomplishment to supply for themselves and do everything within their power to hold that accomplishment from others, to help bring the tide up for all boats.
Yeah.
I would, but that's kind of in a way baked into our patent system and everything else, but is it? I don't know.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to, being a B Corp again. And so B Corp is this third party certification. It's a worldwide certification. And companies like Patagonia have it, Ben & Jerry's have it, Athleta, and then local companies here in Maine like Revision.
What is it for?
So it shows that your company meets the highest environmental and social standards.
Okay.
So you have to prove that your company it's like probably a 200 question quiz, and it goes through like how you take care of employees, like what percentage of healthcare do you cover? What is your bonus system? What is the wage ratio gap between the highest for the CEO and the lowest paid employee? Like all of these real questions to prove that you aren't that person that is just out for themselves and out for the bottom line, that you have multiple stakeholders. Your employees are stakeholders. How the business does affects employees. Is
this an online form that I could go and privately fill out to see if I'm an asshole?
Yes, you can. So anyone can go online it's called the B Impact Assessment, and it's free to take the test. So you can see how many points you have right now in your business, and then you can see like maybe you have to get 80 to be able to submit your application.
And you can kind of identify your areas of where you should improve.
Exactly. So and it's fun too, because it challenges you to measure things that you haven't measured in the past. So like for us, we came up with this whole system of measuring how many in-kind hours we're donating to local nonprofits, how many, what we're doing with our corporate matching for dollars matched to nonprofit donations, what we're doing for our interns. And like, you have to prove all the ways, like, the list of events that you do that are free to teach the community about what you do. It's all documented. Calculating the carbon footprint of your business, and what do you do to offset the carbon emissions that are created by you just existing.
That's interesting, because I know I have people in my life that would be like, this is just a left-wing virtue signal, blah, blah, blah. To hear you talk about it, it's like, well, geez, why wouldn't this just be this is the weird thing. Like, I listened to political stuff from like 2 decades ago, and those right-wingers sound like moderate left-wing people now, but yeah, it's like every single thing that you just mentioned there is a good thing for you to think introspectively about your relationship with your employees.
Yeah.
And to create we've thought about this. Here's a form. You don't have to do it, but you can look at it, and then you can advertise that, we meet this to some degree, or whatever the stipulations are. And then, you can put that out there for attracting talent.
Exactly.
The talent can know I think I'd like to work there.
Yeah, there's like a trust, because you've gone through this very rigorous process to prove everything.
Okay.
And now you have the framework to systematize it in your business. So how can you always continue to prove and document that it's not just about profits? Like, profits count, yes, but what else is your business doing besides making money?
That's kind of that's a weird way of thinking of it for me, because I basically ended up doing the only things I can do. So there's really no decision other than that. I mean, I have a lot of ideas. It's for me, it's the idea. I have to grab onto the ideas that I can personally execute. And then if they're successful, I have to try and protect them and keep doing it. But I have to think, how can I monetize this so I can continue to make these ideas or these abilities to take advantage of them for providing for myself and my family. So
yeah, and sometimes they complement each other. Like, we were talking about your reflections project earlier, and you said that you do that for you, and that is something that will lead to paid work. Like, you just know it will, but like, you did it for free to share important stories.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard so many stories of people that have gotten to like a really, I wouldn't categorize it as successful in a financial term, but like that have gotten to a place of maximal effectiveness and value for everyone by doing simply exactly what they're most interested in and doing it with all of their ability. And that is, when I look at that project, like, that was really good. I wish I was independently wealthy, but I think the people who aren't independently wealthy, who still see that possibility, make the choice to say, I've got to do this. If I don't do this, I'm not answering the higher calling in a way.
Yeah. Having a purpose.
Yeah. That's interesting. So what's the trajectory for you and your businesses, you think? Which, by the way, I want to talk more about ChatGPT because you're seemingly the perfect person to talk to about this in a way. I asked ChatGPT, I fed it your bio, and give me 10 questions that I should ask Becky is Becky, right? I'm horrible with names.
Yes.
Sorry. To extract from her the most, the best questions to help us understand the universe better through her experience. And
that's a good question.
Well, it gave me some pretty much the same questions that Danielle had sent along. I don't think it was interacting with a true thought process of curiosity as much as maybe boilerplate approaches towards getting more information about a defined subject. Being the subject.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of content out there in podcast form about my business and story that isn't in text. And once ChatGPT can interpret all the podcasts, then I think you'll get better questions back.
It had a hard time finding where in a movie a quote was, or even what movie a quote was from. And this is, to me, finding all these inconsistencies and weird things within ChatGPT are ways of understanding it, right?
Yeah. But it will happen like next week, probably.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. It's like in a week, it's like, I can pass the bar exam, no problem now. In 1 week. So I'm always joking around with my father-in-law when he does something good. I'll use the line, although slow and dangerous behind the wheel, senior citizens can be useful. It's from Dumb and Dumber, and he thinks it's hilarious, and we joke around about it. So I tried that on ChatGPT, but I'd replace senior citizens with, although slow and dangerous behind the wheel, AI can be useful. And just to see what it would do with that. It has a weird time with humor too, but it first thought it was like from all these different movies, and it would list who said it and in the movie and where, and it's like, nope, that's wrong. Oh, very sorry, I messed that up. And then it would keep going. And it's just an insanely powerful tool. So how's it going to disrupt your industry? What's the best outcome and what's the worst outcome, you think?
The best outcome is that more people can spend 100% of their day in that creative genius zone where you feel like you're not doing busy work, that you're just thriving.
So I agree with you. In the time that I've spent playing with this, it's been really intense, deep as I can think play. And I almost wonder if there's a way for it to program us how to think better, and if it's doing that. Because my thinking and conversation, like it went from 10% pass rate of the bar to 100 in one thing, my ability to think clearly after interacting with it on clear terms, to say, I know you're AI, I'm a human, you can't say these things because you have these boundaries, but I'm going to try and trap you in this. Are you ready? It'll say, yeah, let's play that game. And then you have to communicate in these very specific ways without emotional biases and pulling from larger unconfirmed things. It's somehow like I feel like a weird intellectual turbocharge after interacting with something in that way.
Yes.
What the hell's going on there? Like, I'm not taking anything, but eliminating all this fuss around, like I fed it a poem that I wrote, and this poem came to me in like all together all at once. There was no thought about it. And that's kind of, I don't know if that's just being ready for the muse kind of thing, but weirdest thing. And then I'd run this poem by people and they'd be like, well, you can't they didn't get it. They couldn't understand it until I spent a lot of time with them talking through it and why and where it's pulling from and what it means. And they're like, oh, one time you feed it to it, and in 5 seconds, it feeds you back exactly the thing that creatively as a human, you're able to strip away so much stuff and communicate something in just a 4-line poem that says so much about a situation, that the people who are trapped emotionally by that situation that want to get out of it can't, because of the emotional block of the first line. They can't understand because of the emotions, the lines afterwards. Chat GPT, just zip right through it. Here's what you're saying. Here's why. Here's this. Here's that. Good to go. Like what's it going to do for us? Like in the worst sense, like what's it going to do for us, you think?
I think it's going to make us all very distrustful, and that there will be kind of like a new economy of face-to-face communication and in-person experiences, because I think that AI is going to get so predictive. Like, you think about your Gmail right now, at least on mine, like if I get an email, there'll be 3 buttons with what I can reply with, like, thanks, looks great, awesome, thanks, or I'll get back to you. And like, I just pick like, oh yeah, I did want to say awesome, thanks. And then you press that, and that's just going to get even more personal and complicated and real. And you're going to get suggested like, oh yeah, like, hey, you haven't talked to Trent in a while. Do you want me to write him an email to see if he wants to go get coffee? Like, then I'll be like, oh yes, I want to do that. And then you'll get an email from me and be like, did Becky really want to have coffee with me? Or is she just like, it's on her calendar to follow up like every, so I just think that there's going to be a lot of that. Like, well, did you really think that? Or, so that there'll just be more in-person stuff. I
had this idea probably 5 years ago I sold a car and wrote an app probably 15 years ago now. Jeez, around 2010, so maybe not. But the app would monitor the buoys out in the ocean to tell, because on the East Coast you get surprise waves. West Coast, there's kind of always waves that you can surf, pretty much. It'll get good, it'll get bad, whatever. On the East Coast, though, there'll be like a very narrow window where you'll be able to surf in a day. And to the point where you have to adjust your whole livelihood, your family relationship, everything, if you want to be able to do these things, right? So I developed this app that monitors the buoys, and when the buoys get to certain pre-specified levels, I know that if I see that buoy at 3 feet at 10 seconds with a south direction, that it's probably going to be pretty good over here. But that'll be in like 5 hours from now, not
Did you
then.
create Magic Seaweed?
No, I wish I did. But
that's pretty cool that you came up with that, because that's a long time ago to write an app for that.
Yeah, it one of those things where like I have a ton of good ideas, but no money and not a great personality for following something through long term. The emotional joy happens at the moment of the creation for me, not necessarily the final execution in a long-term sense. Like I like to make a piece of art that's a representation of my experience, but not the management of a long-term, So I paid some people to write the program. They went in partners with me on it, and long story short, what was this about to begin with?
We were talking about AI. Does it have to do with AI?
Right. So I had used this thing to predict and help people know when they should be able to go surfing. it got picked up in the New York Times and stuff, and it, but it was at the very beginning of apps, and it settled down to the bottom eventually. It became a maintenance issue for the whatever of it, and the company got bought out that I eventually sold it to. And then it actually ended up being bought by one of my clients that we ended up doing a lot of filming for, and we ended up at some place, and I was behind camera, and the guy that had actually written the app for me was on the other side of the camera behind all this lighting and everything. And eventually I was like, Michael? He's like, Trent? I'm like, what are you doing? But that idea of it prompting you to action, something computerized, written, is prompting you into action. So from that, I also had this idea of like the Love Doctor, or some kind of app. You put in the important people in your lives and the significant dates, and then also just the like week-to-week interactions that it might suggest that you send them. So Monday, my app goes, do you want to send this, or this to your wife as a sweet comment? I choose one of those comments. This one, hit it and it sends it.
Yep.
Now, that's bad in a way, but it's a great idea until your wife finds out, or your girlfriend finds out, or your husband finds out, or whoever, that you're just sending these, kind of predetermined things.
Yeah.
And that, like you're saying, like maybe that's the dark side of it eventually. But then, I think as you rightly outlined, eventually it pushes you back down to like, I need to be in front of a person and have an interaction. And just from 10 hours of like really playing with ChatGPT, I realized like in interacting with it, it helps outline what humans are uniquely capable of doing. Mm-hmm. And ChatGPT and AI seems to be a I don't know, like a spider crawling all of the known logic, reason, and facts that we have to help us create more. So it's going to kind of master everything that we've established and do it in a way that is logical, rational, to help us figure out how to create and achieve farther into the future. And I was just listening this morning to a podcast where they were talking about that weird moment of creativity. And it was the Lex Friedman podcast. And, this guy's an AI programmer talking to a deep level mathematician, which podcasts are great for that because you can hear actually intelligent people talk rather than me. And the mathematician was talking about how the leaps in math these days are really at the creative level, because math is based apparently on axioms rather than just 1 + 1 = 2 kind of stuff. At the real philosophical level, it's like these creative leaps that come from these very chaotic, mental, emotional, absolute, you kind of represent like you drive by someone's house and you're like, they are way out there, wacky, pushing it, creative. But it's like that representation is kind of the mind state you need to find these leaps forward sometimes. And massive high percentages of these creative leaps never work. That's the process of evolution. Same thing. Massive amounts of these attempts just don't work. But when you land on that one that does creatively, you know it, and it just sparks. So how does AI in your world help you become more creative like that?
Yeah, I think it's like working faster, cutting the brainstorming time to, okay, now it's like you spend an hour brainstorming on something in a ChatGPT prompt. And now you can then get into the creative analysis of it and the positioning and, keep refining things. I think, it's going to eliminate the mundane and the repetitive tasks.
Geez, I might be able to get a job someday if that's the case. Wow.
Back to the office.
Well, let's not go too far. All satellite work or something. What was the impetus to starting your second company?
Well, it was at a time, so this was about 6 years ago, and I was feeling really stuck. I was just kind of in this funk. I was going to therapy, trying to figure out, I don't know. I was just at a time where I felt kind of like in the routine too much.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I started doing was getting back to crafting and making things with my hands.
Wow, I've gone through the same thing, and I made a
It
coat
sucks
tree
to-
the other day,
You did?
and like I talk way too much in these things, but anyways, sorry. It's just I started with the idea I need something to dry clothes off in the winter when my kids come in, but I want something beautiful, and I don't want to buy
Totally,
just a
yes.
piece of crap from Home Depot or whatever. And I made this like bent wood kind of thing, and like held it together with string and pressure, and like there's no screws or anything. And
I can help you turn this into a business. We can put up an e-commerce site. And
the real business though are the modern Adirondack chairs that I made. Every time I see those or anyone else sees them, it's a really simple solution, and they're great. They just reek Maine, but modern Maine. That we might need to talk about. But this coat tree still leaves a little to be desired. It's in development process, but that hands-on development process, and like a friend of mine's going through this right now. He owns a really successful business, and he's just like, I need to get back to building with my hands. Going through this experience of really relating to subject matters and creative processes and what's possible, and you come out of that just like pop, 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 pop.
Yeah.
It's therapeutic.
It really is. And yeah, I recognize that about myself, is that I always need to have art in my life, and like being a creator of art, even if I don't do it every day, like what can I create every quarter at least?
Why do you think the act of creativity is therapeutic for you?
Well, for me, my hands are busy, so you're not on your phone.
That's a great one. That's a hard one to. Have you noticed like the reels? As soon as you start to, if you're dumb enough to get stuck in reels like me,
I know.
As soon as you start, I think they're doing something. As soon as you start to feel like I need to stop, something gets you. Like they switch it up, and you're like, I wonder if they can sense your eye movement and your levels of interest, and they're like, all right, throw back in the fear of Russia real quick, and then throw in kittens. Now Russia, now kittens. Like something's going on there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's so good to be off my phone.
Off your phone, making something real.
Yeah, and like I just did my first oil painting for the first time.
Really?
This past December, and like that felt so good. I used a palette knife for the first time, and it was just like really nice. Like it felt good, and like no matter what the outcome is, like I think it's more about the process of just who am I when I'm painting? Or I spent a lot of time gold leafing shells that I find on the beach, or gold leafing barnacles, and making like collages of shells that I find on the beach. And I just love like organizing and like creating collages out of things that I love the beach a lot. And that's
so I have a good business model for you.
Okay.
Pottery that's lovingly made, that then I don't know if it's intentionally broken, but broken and then put back together with gold.
Yes. So I did that. I cracked some shells, and I don't remember the name of the Japanese term when you like
wabi sabi.
You like highlight the cracks of it. So I gold leaf the cracks of the shells.
The idea that like your fuck ups are so valuable. Here it is. And that is just how I mess up as a husband, how I mess up as a father. I have to look at that, and I have to figure out what's the gold in between there, put this back together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I need to say this publicly. I heard this yesterday. This is not admittance of my own wrongdoing of something. Sorry. But someone had said something about parenting. You're a parent. At some point, you really want to break their necks occasionally. Maybe you don't, but they start to act up, and you're just like, I don't know how they. But what you do is you imagine yourself 80, and this is your only chance to come back to this time and to respond to what you want to wring their neck for. This is your only chance. You're 80, and you get transported back to this moment. And in that moment, you just switched. You did the Indiana Jones, or you kind of switched out the thing, and you have the amazing opportunity to be present with your child in a moment when they're doing something that has offended you. For I've established this house, and you just ruined the drywall. I'm so mad at you, but it's such a teachable moment. And if you look at that from way in the future, the ability to come back and redo this moment. How do you do that?
Yeah,
and
it's
that
so important
is just
to pause and
thank you for whoever said that yesterday on a podcast or something, that it's like, all right, I got to remember that. That's such an incredible gift to be able to show that even in this moment, I'm going to give you, my child, an example of what's best for both you and I in this moment. I'm not going to let my emotions just, but what were you saying before I interrupted you again?
Become a very patient person.
How'd you
by
do
being
that?
a parent. I don't know. It just, my daughter's an angel now, but she was a terror until she was 4.
Really? I've always heard that it's little boys that are harder when they're little. And then when they get older, you're just like, well, have fun. And then the girls are like, oh no. But I only have 2 boys, so.
You have to just have one girl.
One girl. Having one child is, that's a fun way to do parenting, because for me, like I'm more valuable one-on-one, and to have 2, then I turn into referee rather than communicator. Stop it. Go over there. Yeah. But so, what were we talking about before I sidetracked?
We were talking about, how Wildwood started.
Yes. How and why. And you did it because it was feeding. You felt the need to be creative.
Yes.
And then you started interacting with that. Then you eventually made something and thought, there's a market for this.
Yeah. So I was making little leather wallets out of scrap pieces of leather. And for my birthday, my sister came into my house to celebrate and have cake. And she had this giant roll of leather all wrapped up in a bow. And I was
just for you, she knows you well.
She knows me well.
That's great.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do with a whole hide of leather? Like, this is so crazy.
Raw materials for your birthday.
Yeah. She's like, well, I saw how much fun you were having crafting, and I thought that you could make something cool. And so I was really excited about the opportunity. And that night I just started sketching before bed and trying to think of a bag that I could wear to work that was something that I could sew, number one. So I'm like an okay sewer, certainly not a professional sewer. I also don't have an industrial sewing machine, so like leather is really hard to sew.
Got to have the horsepower and the thick needle to actually. I just tried to fix the leather upholstery in a truck that I bought, and I had to drive all around this place in California to find like an actual curved needle that's strong enough to act, because I was poking the living daylights out of my fingers, and I was like, I just want to fix this. But
it's the whole.
So did you end up getting an actual industrial?
So I just did it on my own sewing machine, and I wanted something like a bag that would celebrate the leather and just the raw beauty of the leather, and came up with this design. The front pocket is half suede, and then the smooth leather around the rest of the bag, and there's a front pocket for my phone, and then my laptop can fit in the main pocket. And then at the time, my office was right next to Hamilton Marine. So I went over to Hamilton Marine, and they have this big pile of remnant dock line that's all these really bright colors. And
not to mention like the other like kind of clasps and stuff and like all that stuff.
Yeah.
I love going to stores like that. I'm like, ooh, I could make this out of that.
Exactly. So I went to Home Depot, and I got the piping that is the closure between where the rope handle hits the leather. And as you know, I love the beach. So I wanted a bag that was sea inspired, but didn't have a big anchor on it, and ended up with this bag that I made just for myself. And then when I started wearing it around, it was like nothing I've ever worn before, where so many strangers would just stop me and ask me where I got my bag from and where they could get one. And eventually it was like, all right, like this is a sign. I need to see if I can make this a business, since I know how to build e-commerce sites and market e-commerce companies through my work at iBec. I had all the tools I needed to launch the e-commerce business for Wildwood.
So you made a client for your existing business.
Yes. So the businesses are separate, but Wildwood hires iBec for our digital marketing and advertising, and then iBec hires Wildwood for our client gifts.
Well done.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
So I started off with 100 bags and figured I would see how long it would take me to sell.
Where'd you get
100
them made?
bags. There's a local manufacturer at the time, small batch manufacturer down on East Bayside called Wallace and James. And I brought my prototype there and said, I want to start off with 100 bags. Like, can you make this look a little bit more refined than what I had hobbled through on my own sewing machine? And they helped me source the leather and develop the dye template. So the leather gets stamped out on this metal die, and we work with a company up in Lewiston to get that done. And then we work with a company, Zootility in Portland, that does all of our metal finishings. And then we get a rope still at Hamilton Marine. So really focusing on making a bag that is made from as many, at least vendors as we can.
And you went with Hamilton rather than West Marine because you like to shop locally.
Well, yeah. And sometimes we do need to buy from West Marine. It depends. We help all the rope companies, but we buy most of our rope from Hamilton. And then I sold the 100 bags and just kept going with it. And today we've sold over 3,000 and continuing to find more people that discover us. And
so the bag you were showing me earlier, I really like the tassels. Are not just tassels; they're referenced like from the actual, I don't know, the kind of seaweed.
It's rockweed.
Rockweed.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really interesting detail. Like even the brass parts have a little, not engraving, but there's engraving on it. Really, really detail oriented. Awesome materials. How do you offer like a set amount of models or kinds or types? I haven't looked on that website yet. I want to just kind of get it from the horse's mouth. But.
Yes. So I started off with the brown leather bag with the teal dock line. Okay. And that has been our number one seller still. And then as the business grew and I started to get feedback from people, a lot of my early bag design ideas came from my relatives. So my sister always wears black. So she definitely needed a black Wildwood bag with black dock line. So I launched that bag next, and that became our second bestseller. And then my mother-in-law, she likes a crossbody and she likes a smaller bag. So
crossbody meaning like
so you can be
left
hands-free.
shoulder, right hip kind of thing. Okay.
So we launched the zip crossbody, which is a smaller bag, but still has the core parts of the Wildwood brand, having the smooth leather with the suede contrasted, the chunky zipper, chunky brass parts, and then the dock line rope. So have you identified kind of like a brand aesthetic that you maintain with these bags and are attempting to not go out of, or are you attempting to stay in that? And then as you have that and establish sales, develop another line kind of in that way? That's definitely, I think, the biggest challenge right now is trying not to grow through creating a ton of SKUs. Like I know that my original tote, that there are thousands of more women that would love the bag. They just don't know about it yet. So I feel like I need to reach those women first before I start my clothesline.
So you know there's people out there who want what you're going to make. They just don't know it yet.
Yes.
Yeah,
I do.
I like that confidence.
I mean, it's you can tie it back to numbers though, like because we're doing Instagram, Facebook, and Google advertising, and you can watch the return on ad spend. So if you spend $5,000 this month and you get back $25,000 in sales, you know that you can. There's still more people to see, so you can increase your ad budget from $5,000 to $7,000 and see if you maintain that same 5x return on ad spend, and just like keep playing with the numbers. And then eventually you'll get to a point where you have to create new things to sell to new people. But
go ahead.
I feel like I want to be excellent, and I want to be known, almost like having a cult following of like people that see the Wildwood bag. I want them to look at somebody that's wearing it, and if they own one too, be like, oh, I bet I would be friends with that person because like I get them a little bit. Like they like the ocean, they like quality, they like aren't fussy, they don't need to have a Louis Vuitton bag that's plastered in logos. Like they appreciate quality and uniqueness and
quality,
ocean.
refinement, and an understated beauty rather than a big G with a red and blue whatever under it. Yeah. That's a really interesting way of thinking about it. Like, because the people who are going to get your bags are going to get them for very specific reasons, and I hope you're charging an amount that makes them value it. Mm-hmm. And so if they see someone else with it, they're going to be like, "Oh, you know about it too." And because I would imagine you're such a small company right now, there's not going to be any like major logo recognition. But there'll be like
but if the design can be the logo, you know?
Exactly,
like
right.
if I can have a strong enough design, which I think I do, like I think what I created is unique.
Right.
That can be the thing rather than having.
So do you avoid having a graphic logo for a certain amount of time, but then when you get big enough, you have to do that? Or
I'm not sure. I feel very cautious of making sure that I don't create things that already exist and that I don't like start selling sweatshirts with Wildwood Oyster Co on it, right? Because like there's already plenty of good sweatshirts. I don't need to create that sweatshirt.
So what's to start to veer off topic, what's your position on merch when you're advising people getting the word out there on this incredibly merch centric kind of creator spaces? And
I don't know. I would just stick with stickers.
No pun intended. That's fair. I have friends and stuff that'll say like, yeah, you need to do some Trump L photography merch. I'm like, I don't know what. I have an idea of doing like that camera that we use today. I think I want to relate it to how many actual floppy disks with the hole in the line, would take for just one file that's taken with that. So you'd have like 100 little floppy disks and then that camera just down at the bottom. It'd be like an inside joke in a way.
Yeah.
If you're middle-aged and using this camera, you know that.
Well, you should do what brings you joy, Trent.
I don't know that the world could take that. They'd be like, what's wrong with this guy? That you have such a clear business mind and ability to articulate it. It's a real pleasure to be able to pick the brain of someone who can think in that way. You must have had some nature rather than nurture in your life to be able to get to the point where you're at. You must have just natural abilities that have helped put you in this position that, I'm really talented with reading people and their comfort level and talented at managing and knowing how to treat people and how to have the confidence to not feel like I need to control. Like how much of a level of introspection do you have on your own achievement of the success that you have at this point? Because I often think about it that I've been able to achieve not having to go to a job that I don't like, at least, which
big check.
That's the first paycheck that I wanted to get, was that I had autonomy of my own interest to pursue those in a way. How much have you spent time self-reflecting on what has made me successful and why, as a means of employing that back into the company when so many other people would love to be doing what you're doing and maybe even have great ideas just as good as what you have, but like me, haven't been able to really go to that next one. Like in many ways, I feel like I've been able to achieve one thing that sustained me, and it's like my creative interests just want to be served over here, and I'm not turning them into something that's turning into a business. I'm just using what I do over here to pay for me looking into all my further interests, but I'm not turning it into a business. Maybe I don't need to do that, but I kind of wouldn't mind having an increased amount of freedom through the creativity feeding back to me that way in some sense, which is where people like you come in. kind of.
Yeah. Gosh, I feel like, I suppose it's being empathetic and, very empathetic to customers and clients, like especially when it's just one person. You know, when I was a solopreneur, didn't have employees, like that has helped. And then making sure that I can scale empathy, if that's even a thing. Like, how do you make sure that the teams that you're growing, that being empathetic is
they maintain the vision for empathy that you established.
Yes.
You don't want that to start to represent you as a business of coming from some unempathetic person that didn't instill that into the business. Okay.
And then I think I work really hard. I am willing to put in the hours, and I just don't give up. When I first started out my business, I spent the whole time cold calling with no experience cold calling. And that was like the hardest thing to do.
Those are demeaning days at the end of them.
It's awful. It's
horrible.
So bad. But yet, like, you kind of pay your dues, and you're that much tougher after it. And, you know, when I started Wildwood, I would be, you know, sewing the rope to the bags, you know, in my bathrobe at 6 a.m. or in my pajamas at 11 p.m. at night. Like, I just did what it took because I had to get the order out the next day.
Right.
And I'm willing to do that, knowing that it's not a permanent solution. I can't work all the time forever.
Right.
But like, there are moments in my career where I've worked an unhealthy amount. So I'm willing to sacrifice, and I think I'm willing to take risks. Like we talked about risk earlier. And
have you always been that way, or is that something you had to learn? Okay.
Yes. I didn't know that I was, it's like kind of just like learned like, oh yeah, I was kind of risky.
Yeah.
Being younger, but.
Yeah. As a personality trait, I knew I needed to take risks, and I wanted to take successful risks, as anyone would, if you know they're going to be successful. But I did it at a very kind of incremental, safe thing. I like to think that, like, yeah, I took risks and I knew that. But if I look back on it, honestly, it's like everything was incremental. I was very clear with my wife ahead of time, like, I don't know how long I'm going to have to work before I can even bring money home. You okay with that? And God bless her, she's just like, whatever.
Yeah, my husband was the same way. Like, you know, it's just so important that you have a spouse that supports you, and that absolutely, because like you and I being our own businesses, like a lot of partners can't accept that risk. And so having a partner that's supportive is really important.
If your husband came to you and it was reversed, are you able to grant that in the other direction?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, see that now we're starting to define what might be an asshole. I couldn't take it if I was with someone else who was taking big risks outside of my control. Like, and that it would be very emotionally tumultuous for me to think that, like, yeah, I'm so caught up in my own head to know that I don't have a grasp on where this is going, and I can't sense what you're doing because I sense through experience. That positive relationship emotionally towards novel experience for me informs the decisions I make. And so when I'm taking a risk, it's coming from a very experientially, emotionally place of things that I intuit that I think are going to happen or will be the trend or will be a need. But to have that trust outside of myself, I don't naturally go there, but I think I'm learning to, with how much competence I'm seeing in my wife, in her interest in what she's doing with PT and everything else. I think that's just one of the things I have to admit about myself, that I have to really focus on changing and growing in that area probably. But
Yeah, I think we're all growing. Like I didn't start off being a good manager. Like I had to learn that the hard way and make mistakes. And I'm still very much like that's probably another reason for my career path so far is like I'm always reading, I'm always trying to learn, take courses, be better, network with other people, other businesses, and just continue to learn as much as I can.
Right. Let me play a game with you where I give you a horrible management solution that I came up with.
Okay.
And you can tell me where it will go bad. And then we can see if you were right. And I can tell you where it went bad and why in my thinking anyways. So I went, as a photographer, you have to shoot. These days you have to shoot, and then you have to do all the post-production work, which now, previously, all the work was done on site with film and adding light and everything else. And then you had very limited abilities to dodge and burn and all that. I got to a point where I could do all the Photoshop and everything else to make the end result, to the layering of all the images look how I wanted it to look. It looks natural. It doesn't look artificial, but it's more than you can achieve on film. But I don't have a high degree of stick-to-itiveness when it comes to fussy details.
Yeah.
And I knew I do want that, but I don't want to do that.
Yes.
So I got to hire someone who's good at that and who wants to do that. Okay.
I can relate.
So I'm thinking, geez, I'm not making a ton of money, but I need to find someone to work with me to grow this. I can either find someone who will come on and see the value that I could maybe have as a partnership relationship, or they can come on as a hourly relationship and be guaranteed and not have no anonymity or have no tangling of partnership, but just know, like, if I spend an hour, this is what I get. So I set up the relationship to hire a studio manager to do all that work, and basically came up with the policy of saying, like, look, I'm just going to pile all the work I can over on your plate, and when you need help, just let me know.
Yeah. And I think that next time, knowing that you're particular.
This was about 12 years ago, and it did not work out well.
I think like just being really clear about training takes so much time. I personally feel like anxiety when I think about how much training it takes to get an employee to the point when they can be autonomous.
Right.
But I know the pain that I'll have if I don't do the proper training and invest in the proper training. So,
well, to be clear though, this person was more talented at what they were doing, and they did it better than I could. But it still failed.
Yeah. Why do you think it failed?
Because I told him, look, I'm going to pay you. You've chosen like this relationship for us. You've chosen, I think it was more of an hourly relationship. So you know you're going to be getting what you're getting. Okay, good. And I'm going to push everything over towards you to do that I can. When you're not competent enough or physically capable enough or can't figure out how to get everything done that I push over to you, let me know and I'll come in and save you. That's what I set up.
Did they end up getting overworked or burnt out or?
Well, if I were to put myself in that person's, I think I'm probably a pretty hard person to work with long-term. Like you're saying, we'd hire you as a contractor. I can have that laser focus and I can come and I can accomplish a defined task really well. I think long-term, there's more complexity and I've learned from my mistakes, but setting that one up, I just made a relationship of incompetence not incompetence, but like, oh, you can't handle it. Just raise your hand and I'll come over and I'll fix what you can't do. You know, that was really, and I think because I don't have as much empathy as I should, I don't have the ability to, when I thought of like being in his situation, I didn't put myself over there and think in that way. I just thought in this way. And in this way, it works fine. I'm not going to be mad at you if you can't do it. I put more than you could do there intentionally so we can then find out what I need to do and what you can do. That's cut and dried and clear, but the emotional situation is going to be an expectation, or they're going to want to feel like they can do anything. Everyone would. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't perceive that I would be doing that to someone. And I think over time that just wore the person down, and they just wanted to find somewhere else to work because they didn't enjoy being around that all the time, which I totally get.
Yeah.
And I've done everything I can to avoid that moving forward. And the guy I have working with me now, who's become a really good friend and is insanely good at what he does and can handle, at least on the surface level, all of the weirdness that I am, and seems to be surviving it really well for the last decade almost now. So
yeah, it's definitely an art, and to, figure out people, and you have to be really good listener. Like thinking back to one of our employees will say that they have too much to do for the week. And from my perspective, I feel like I always have too much to do, but I have to just focus on the most important things. And that works for me, but I have to respect that doesn't work for other people, and change the way that we're assigning work so that every day, every week, they feel like they can successfully accomplish what they need to do, and they feel like they've completed their job at the end of the week and the end of the month. Whereas me, I'm never done. There's always something I didn't get to do, and it's just, it is what it is.
Two things I'd love to hear about from you on that. One, the constant gnawing of stress of being an entrepreneurial person is even at just me and one employee, it's not anything compared to that's 7 times less what I deal with. And it's still constantly, it's always right there, just well, what are you going to do? You got to keep this thing afloat. You got to, blah, blah, blah. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I just get used to it, and I accept that it's part of my personality.
Right.
I think in the beginning, I tried to fight, oh, why can't I take a vacation? I always have to check my email. And then it's okay, well, I do always have to check my email, but how can I say time block to only check my email twice a day if I'm on vacation? Or I actually did just take my first email-free vacation this February, which was delightful. And I can't believe it took me this long.
That?
So my secret was that I told everybody that I wasn't going to check email, and they could call or text me if they needed me. And I did it for both companies. I said I've never taken a vacation without email my whole life. It's time. And so by telling everybody, I had to be accountable for it. So when I, got on the plane and wanted to check my email, I was I thought
you weren't checking your emails. What's going on?
Yeah. So I had to be accountable and show that I could do what I said I was going to do. Yeah. And it was beautiful. It was really nice to be present. And my mind was still thinking about the business and coming up with ideas and brainstorming, and, just it's part of my thought waves. But I didn't have that Pavlovian, what is new on Slack? What is new in Gmail?
Oh, I'm finding myself wanting to take a cell phone vacation because of texting, reels, email, absolutely everything is just right there constantly. But, at the same time, all of my curiosity that feeds the creativity is available through that as well. So it's I've gotten pretty good at taking time off. And I've realized the most, around 44, you'll start to realize, or maybe you already have, you seem to be a little more advanced than me. I started to realize, okay, I can double down and I can make more money, and I can leave that to my kids, because I'm figuring out what is most valuable to me at this point. Do I want to leave empowerment through financial means to my children, or do I want to leave them the knowledge that I valued them more with my time than with the result of my time.
Mm-hmm.
And my time is directly connected to me looking them in the eyes and being with them, much more so than leaving them, thousands and hundreds, whatever, and to realize that, say, okay, how do I reverse engineer this now to actually spend quality and lots of time with my family, more so than just earning more money, And so when I was able to at least make that choice, it starts to rein in and make choices in the shorter term for me that lead towards accomplishing that greatest value of what is giving to what's most important to me.
Yeah.
But then I constantly battle with, there's another good idea. But then I have to kind of follow it up with well, you're not good at following through on ideas. You're good at coming up with ideas. So yeah, that's hard.
Yeah. I look at time freedom as the highest form of wealth.
Yeah.
You can exist and always have the choice of what to do.
Mm.
And I believe that you can do that on all levels of wealth, or most levels of wealth, I should say. Because I think that you can design ways to live below your means so that you'll always have the time freedom.
So here's a theory I have. The more effective a person is in the more amount of lives, the less effective they will be in the immediate needs of the people closest to him. So take someone like Steve Jobs. How likely do you think it is he was able to be present as a father and husband?
Unlikely.
Or, mother and wife or whatever. Anyone who has that much going on, who achieves such incredible things, either as a politician or a movie producer, director, actor, photographer, business owner, if the more you're effective outside of your family, it takes from what's immediate in your family, and that affects the future of all of us. I wonder, I don't know how to relate to that.
You're making me have mom guilt.
Well, I mean, I have huge, like I said earlier, I have massive female tendencies to my value system that are more so, the stereotype, if we will, are more towards the value of relationship is just, I don't see anything as being more valuable than that, period. And in my thinking, the truth is outside of us, and it's our call to relate to that. And that's why I value relationship so much. And it's in that ambiguous thing that's abstract of relationship where you find truth, to be able to give that to the rest of reality. And even within the thing I struggle with a lot is trying to teach my kids verbally something. I can't. I don't know how to really do that and have it last. But what I can do is act out what I'm trying to teach them and connect it with a positive memory, as far as me having patience and showing them love in that moment, or a great experience together where these things that I'm trying to teach them are embodied.
Yeah.
And by doing that, I'm not your daughter's going to see a mother that is enveloped in the purpose and the creative, flowering of these things that give so much to so many people. And as long as you're conscious of that relationship and you're not just this is a burden, that's just simply not going to be an issue, as long as it can be an issue. And I think everyone kind of varies in their amount of time asset that they have and how much they can put it here and there, just depending on their circumstances and their personality and everything else. But for me, working with that balance, I see where my abilities are and what I can give to my children. And I maybe that's what I did. I saw that anything that I focus on with my time beyond somewhat of a spark of the idea becomes a non-successful venture. If I'm the person trying to take it all the way through, I know enough to know that that's not my strong point now, maybe.
But now you're putting it out to the universe, and maybe you'll find that person that can be your executor.
Well, in talking to someone like you is really interesting, because what is it that like you really do with your foundational company that you started? Like, what is it that you bring to, if you could apply it to what I do as an architectural photographer, or someone who's maybe wanting to start an art gallery or grow a podcast, like, do you have the ability to service something like that? And is that a thing?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like with enough research, I could figure out how to build many types of businesses.
But I mean, with what you do with iBec Creative, if Trent Bell Photography came to iBec Creative and said, I don't know, I just need a better business, like, is that like, that's what we're here for? Let's start the interview process.
Yeah, we don't do a lot of like business strategy. If you came to us and you were like, this is my ideal client, and I have 50 of these right now, and I'd like to have 500, help me get there. That's what we would be good at.
Ah, okay. So I do need to come talk to you guys probably.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a weird thing with digital photography and commercial photography these days, that it's a lot of times it's like you join a company that basically has at its fundamental thing just a website where you get listed on, and they try and push their website to all potential clients. But it's far less of a exacting thing of like finding, like, I'm sure they probably offer some service like that I've been too distracted to actually learn about, maybe. But having someone local and using someone local would be a much better interaction for me than doing that in a disconnected kind of, you're in Philadelphia and I'm here, and yeah.
So. Yeah, anytime. Come on by. We're right next to the Eastland Hotel on High Street.
Oh, this is a good segue to thank you. And we'll continue this conversation potentially around increased business and helping me get my act together with finding new and growing clients, maybe. So,
well, thank you, Trent. This has been super fun and very deep.
I like the pause before super fun. That's the good part. This has been
it has been fun. I wasn't sure where we would go, but we went many places and they were all good.
Cool. Well, I'm definitely sorry if my connection to work-life prostitution triggers anyone or anything else, but I think you get the idea of what I'm trying to talk about and share. But
yeah, it's more than just profit. There's a lot of purpose and a lot of good that businesses can create with some thoughtfulness and someone who cares.
Yeah. If a business like yours had been one of my first jobs, maybe I would have more of an ability to say, in being content, happy, and not hating my entire weekend because I know Monday's coming, maybe I would have enjoyed being an employable person at that point. I don't know.
I think you were always destined to be doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't have any problems with it, and I really enjoy it. So, hopefully I'm serving some purpose for that beyond just paying for my life. So, yeah. Regardless of all of that, thank you very much for coming down here and putting up with my needling questions and everything else. It's a real pleasure to. There's some people you can talk to who can't answer questions very easily. And there's others that can really answer questions. And I'm going to put you in that latter category.
Oh, I'm honored.
That's not even a compliment. That's just an observation. Like, it's the more people I interact with that are successful at what they do, they have an ability to talk about it at every level, because they make the decisions at this level because they understand why they're doing what they do. And for me, that's why I was sharing, like, what's the best value I can do in my life at this point. And transferring what I believe is right, true, and good to the two little sets of eyes that look back at me. And that's personal for me, but obviously I do all this, I do my work, and I have that as much of an identity for myself and everything else too. But thank you for being able to go to all those different levels. I think that makes for really interesting conversation, really conversation that leaves you slightly with goosebumps at the end of it and feeling that you've actually heard something that's maybe changed your outlook a bit to a more hopefully balanced perspective. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Well, Becky McKinnell, right? I'm so bad with names. Maybe in the future we'll just have numbers and that'll be impersonal. But I did come up with a theory of why we have names. Want to hear it?
Yeah.
So every word we have is a encapsulation of an experience. So yes is I feel positive towards this. No is I feel negative towards this. Everything is built off of that. Every yellow is a word that encapsulates what we commonly agree is the experience of seeing yellow. Every word we have is a name for an experience. But when it comes to names, they're not words, they're names. You can't use them in Scrabble. Why is that? A name calls you into experience to know it. A word is a common thing held between us that we experience already. But a name calls you in to knowing a person.
I get where you're going.
Not a preconceived objectification of something. We've objectified what we think of as love and laws and facts and cars and chairs. We have not objectified Becky. And we only get to really move towards a clear understanding of what you are by engaging with you and getting to know you. And I love that idea.
Well, now we know each other.
Surface level a little bit, and we've dug deep, but yeah, those are the kind of things that I get excited about, which is figure out how to monetize them.
Well, my AI will ask you for coffee and we can talk more about it.
Oh my goodness, a whole nother conversation about AI. Like, I'll give you a year to get over this, and then I got to have you back to talk about more AI stuff.
Yeah,
in a year,
it's going to
be drastically different. So it's going to be insane. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to cut it off right now because I'll keep going. Bye-bye.
Thank you.